Okay, all right. I'm Mr. Radford.
And I'm Miss Nickerson.
And today we're going to be looking at the biochemicals, and these are the molecules of life.
I think there's 4 main molecules, aren't they?
Yep, and so we learned about how atoms bond, and carbon is the backbone to all of these macromolecules. And
I think that's why we're called a carbon life form, right?
that's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are 4 types of these macromolecules, and macro just means large. And so we got carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and then the nucleic acid group. Today we're going to be going through the carbohydrates and the lipids.
So a carbohydrate is basically just when you take carbon and water in different proportions, right?
That's right.
Okay. A simple sugar. I like simple sugars. They taste delicious.
Yeah. And they do taste delicious because they are our main food source. Okay, they give our muscles quick energy, and they get stored in our liver, and then ultimately, if they're not used, then they turn into fats.
Okay, so we sometimes think of carbohydrates as just pasta, but really carbohydrates are also just sugars too. Because if I eat a sucker, I can get some quick energy.
That's right.
Pasta, maybe energy tomorrow.
Yep.
Okay.
And we use it quickly, and so that's why every 4 hours we get hungry. And so if we look at this kind of the old school food pyramid, but most of our sustenance should come from the carbohydrates. So we have the pastas and the bread and the rices in the bottom, and then we also get the carbohydrates in the sugars from fruits, and even some of the dairy products that we have.
Okay, so eat your carbs.
That's right.
Yeah, all right. So I think there's 3 types of carbohydrates, and I like to look at these, and what the word is kind of tells me a little bit about
Prefix.
it. So
Yep.
monosaccharide, mono means 1, disaccharide means 2, and polysaccharides means many. So 1, 2, and many what?
Sugars.
Sugars. Okay. So monosaccharides is 1 sugar.
Okay, so we have some examples there on the slide, the way that and you can see how the carbon is the backbone, and all of the other atoms connect to that. So mono means 1, and so the basic formula for a sugar is what?
C6H12O6, and I like to call this glucose.
Yep.
And we're going to learn more about this molecule when we talk about photosynthesis and cellular respiration.
It's very important for a lot of life processes. So, and speaking of glucose, our first example, there it is.
There you go. Use it in the hospital when you get hurt.
Okay.
A complicated monosaccharide, or a different monosaccharide would be fructose, and that's going to be found in fruits. So glucose is more plants and humans, fructose is fruits.
And you can see that they combine in rearrange themselves differently.
And there's lots of different combinations, yeah.
So then we have disaccharides again. So these are 2 sugars that are bonded together.
Oh, I see how it looks like kind of 2 rings that are formed together.
Yes,
there.
they are. Yep. Prefix means 2, and so our kind of base formula is we just double everything. Okay. And so it's not perfect, but we have the C12H22O11. And then a water molecule.
Water holding that together.
Yep.
Okay. So like table sugar is a good example of a disaccharide. And the more complex the carbohydrate is, the harder your body has in taking it apart, and the more energy is available in it. So this table sugar has more energy in it than just straight glucose.
Yep.
Okay.
Lactose. People that are lactose intolerant, they have a hard time. They don't have a protein that can break down this the milk sugar.
Okay.
So anyway,
And then
sugar. So
Okay.
anyway.
And then many, so lots of sugars bonded together. And I see this plant cell wall picture here, and it's got hundreds of them bonded together.
Yes, yeah.
So this probably does not have a formula.
No, it's too huge to write out.
Okay. But glycogen is what we store polysaccharides in animals. And then starches are what we store in plants. We can eat both of those things. So here we have a potato plant, right?
Yep. And so the tuber, it's the tuber plants, all of the potatoes, they have just those
starches.
Roots. Just that it's basically the plant is storing all of its sugar down in its root system.
You could survive on potatoes.
Yes, you could.
You had to. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So a little bit more about polysaccharides. There are a couple polysaccharides that humans don't utilize that much. And cellulose is one of them. It's makes up the outside of cell walls in plants, and which is good because it's really stiff and rigid and gives plants their basically skeleton since they don't have bones. Cotton is a good example of that. But we cannot digest it.
And so here in a second, it'll be kind of your homework to try to figure out why.
Oh.
Why can different animals live off plants, okay, and why Why can't we?
Why
So
can't we
that's kind of
just
your
eat
homework.
plants? I'm not going to do it. If you ever want to see kind of what cellulose is in your mouth, you take a carrot or celery and chew and chew and chew till you get all the juices off, that kind of wad of stuff that's left in there, it's cellulose.
Yep.
You'll eat it, but you'll be seeing it later probably.
Yes.
So, okay.
So there you go. Why can herbivores like cows, and it got cut off, live on
Just plants.
plants, and why can't we? Okay.
You'll be seeing it later probably.
Yes.
So, okay.
So there you go. Why can herbivores like cows, and it got cut off, live on
Just plants.
plants, and why can't we? Okay. So something good to look up are the ruminants.
And I put a link to this video on our BioFlip website.
Okay, great.
And so if you guys want to go to where the notes section, this is also listed there, as well as one other one we'll use for the next lecture. And you can click on it and come to class and be ready to talk about why we can't survive on plants.
Yep.
Tell me about lipids.
Okay, so that we have 4 types of lipids. Okay, so fats and oils, the steroids. Okay, who would have thought that fats and oils, steroids, kind of the same basic
Group, waxes.
waxes. Okay, and then phospholipids.
Okay.
So we'll kind of break
4
down.
different types of lipids. Okay, we'll talk about fats and oils first.
Okay.
So basically, fats and oils, when I think of fat and oil, I think about stuff that does not dissolve or mix in with water. And the difference between a fat and oil is what they're like at room temperature. Fats are solid at room temperature and found in animals, and oils are liquid at room temperature and found in plants. That's
Olive
really-
oil.
Olive oil, there we go.
Okay.
And
Peanut
fat.
oil. Yep. All that.
Okay.
Okay.
You can get a lot of energy from fats. People don't necessarily want to hear that, like you don't eat a ton of fat, but you'll get more energy from fat than you will from, let's say, a carbohydrate.
Yeah, and so carbohydrates, proteins give us about 4 calories per gram. Fat calories, we get 9 per gram. So, I talk to people who are, going to maybe go on long hikes. They have a lot of nuts, a lot of those kinds of things that have a high fat content so that they can, if they're hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, which is a 1,000-mile trail, they can make
lasting
that.
energy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
So, we were just talking about, and if we don't use up all that fat, our body stores it for later. So fat in our bodies is this storage of fats and oils in adipose tissue, which is tissue that has a lot of space in it in your body.
Okay, and so
Mrs. Nicholson, if you could call the front office, please. Mrs.
No, I
Nicholson.
cannot.
we'll be right there. So we have to burn that fat. We have to first burn our glucose, then our glycogen reserves, and then we get into our fat reserves. So I talk to kids about exercising, or when they get older and they get less active, it's really hard to manage your weight sometimes, and that's why. So you need to get into the 20 plus minutes of aerobic exercise to even start to begin to burn your fat.
Okay, so a 10-minute walk's not going to cut it.
It's not going to
Okay.
cut it. Okay.
Is all fat bad? Okay.
Well, it's in the news. We hear about it all the time. Oh, lose weight. But we need it. Our
Yeah.
bodies need it.
You would die actually if you didn't consume any fat.
That's true.
Yeah.
So insulation, it helps. Because of that, it helps us maintain our body temperature. We need it to break down certain non-water soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K.
Cushioning, I know, I don't want to slip and fall, and
That's right.
need a little padding there sometimes.
Yep.
And then it makes up the cell membrane of our cells, a phospholipid membrane, we'll talk about in a second, which
Yep.
is really important for how our
Yep.
body's structured.
Yep.
All right, steroids. When I think of steroids, I think of like bodybuilders and that kind of stuff, which is kind of
Barry
the same thing,
Bonds.
but it's a little bit different. It's hormone
Yeah.
based, right, which controls how your body does things. So cholesterol is basically used to make testosterone and estrogen, the stuff that makes us girls and boys. So it's still steroid based.
Yep.
Waxes. I think of earwax when
I
think
do.
of
I do
air
too.
candle, but they're kind of the same thing. It prevents water loss. So you get some wax on the surface of your skin. It's going to
Yep.
help your skin from drying out.
Yep.
Keep your hair nice and shiny. And then in my ear, it's going to help track out dirt and dust and other stuff like that.
Yep. And that outside of plants on the stem, it's
Waxy
a waxy surface.
Nice and shiny. And lastly, my favorite, phospholipids. I don't know why I like these guys, I just do. They make up the cell membranes that make up all of our cells, and they allow for us to create a barrier. So when phospholipids join together, they create a membrane that keeps some things on the inside of the cell and some things on the outside of the cell. And it's because they're properties of lipids that allow them to do that.
Okay.
Their structure has one end that's polar, which means it likes water, and the other end, which does not like water. It's hydrophobic. And so it arranges itself to put the parts that like water on the outside and the parts that don't like water on the inside, and it creates a barrier.
It does.
It's pretty good.
Okay, so there's our picture. Okay,
Yeah.
so on the inside it would be the water-fearing hydrophobic region. Okay, and within our cell membranes we do have other proteins and things embedded into it, but on the outside it's the hydrophilic region. Okay, and that's the water-loving side, and so water will go in and out of that depending on a lot of things that we'll get to in later lectures.
It kind of looks like a head with tails coming off of it. One head
Yep.
with two tails coming off of it.
Yep.
All right, so main characteristics of lipids, you need to know that they are not soluble in water. They're
Yep.
not going to mix with water.
Yep.
All right.
We are done.
We are done. Check out the video. Be ready to discuss in class and show us your notes. And thanks for joining us for the Viking Science Academy.
All right.